Hello, cosmic beings out there. I'm Mannah, a therapeutic astrologer and interviewer. I'm passionate about learning and sharing insights on how to live a better life. I hope you'll stick around as I infiltrate the minds of thought leaders, authors, and healers from around the globe. Wherever you find yourself right now, dear listener, I want you to remember that you have a place to call whole. Now, please enjoy this episode. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Tap Into Sacred Times. It's a really interesting topic today, sacred psychiatry. Is that even possible, is my question. And I have the right person to speak with that about. Welcome, Judy Tsafrir.
Thank you, Mannah. So pleased to be here today to talk with you.
I knew I was not going to say that name right. Can you just say your name?
Tsafrir.
Yes, that's the name.
Tsafrir. Yep.
Tsafrir. Okay. And your book, Sacred Psychiatry. I mean, when I heard about that, I was like, what even is that? And that's basically my first question to you is what was the project around writing this book? And obviously, well, let me just give you people your titles. You are a psychiatrist. You are also a psychoanalyst. And then you are also a shamanic practitioner and an astrologer, right? Even evolutionary astrologer like myself. So, I mean, yeah, how is it possible to be in psychiatry that, in my mind, it's so technical and it's so scientific and very brainy, and then to have this whole alternative take to it?
Right. So that's what makes it sacred, right? It's like conventional psychiatry, as you said, is very much based on a scientific materialist paradigm where there's no awareness or appreciation or acknowledgement of the sacred dimension of human beings or of the world. And it's all about our 3D experience and our personality selves and our physical body and identifying symptoms that are then suppressed with pharmaceuticals or with procedures. And I am proposing an alternative approach to dealing with psychiatric conditions, which takes into account the person's body as well as their mind and heart and their spirit. So that's what makes it sacred, is including the spiritual dimension of the human experience, which is very, very important piece of healing.
But isn't possible? I mean, today I'm sure people who seek you out do that because of that sacred dimension. But when you were in your training and when you just started out in psychiatry, you must have been indoctrinated almost into another more materialistic paradigm.
I was indoctrinated into a materialist paradigm, but the training program that I attended and my own particular interests always were in the area of the psychological, the psychoanalytic. And so that already presupposes an unconscious dimension of experience. And I had really excellent training. I mean, things are totally different today, but I did my residency. I did my residency between 86 and 89, and then I did a training in child psychiatry between 91 and 93, and I also did adult and child analytic training between 91 and like 98. And things were different then. There was more value placed on talking than there is today, and more value placed on the therapeutic power of talking. But still, I feel as it was a very limited paradigm insofar as it did not include any sacred dimension of experience.
Right. So what you're also saying there is that today there's more emphasis on subscribing medication to people.
Yeah, it's really pretty exclusively pharmaceuticals. Although, there are, other procedures like transmedic transmagnetic cranial stimulation or electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. There's those kinds of interventions, but there's nothing about like the power of a spiritual practice or um, prayer, or gratitude or service in terms of healing is an important component of healing.
Okay, so I really want to hear about that. But first, just how could you stand then being in that field of psychiatry if you had, or did you
It
get?
was very different. It was very different then. And I was different as well. Like I was really thrilled with learning about the psychoanalytic approach. Like I was really into it. And I didn't feel in conflict about it. And medications were taught to me, but it was really kind of a secondary thing. It was not the most important, most interesting thing. And I had wonderful teachers, and I wasn't it isn't the way it is today.
Okay, okay. Thank you for repeating because now I finally hear you. I I hear you because what's I'm just reminded that sometimes when I read some psychology book, the person will actually be a psychiatrist, right? Because back in the day, it wasn't like what it is today. Why do you think it has become the way it is today, where it is? I mean, people, at least where I am, people are sent to a psychiatrist in order to get some medication.
Yeah,
And
yes, and that's the same here. That's the same here. I mean, it's cost effective, just in terms of, a 15-minute appointment. What are your symptoms? Okay, you have these symptoms. Okay, that qualifies for this diagnosis. Okay, then therefore I give you this pill. It's like an algorithm. It's not anything that's thoughtful or personalized or, like a like a good psychotherapy is, in my view, something quite organic and meandering and inefficient, profound, but it's not like cost effective, you know. I do think that it has, tremendous healing potential, but I have to say, like, if I were to do the training that I had then now, I would not be happy either. Like because I'm so interested in the sacred dimension and power of the spiritual for healing, I would feel frustrated with the training that I had, but that's not where I was then.
yeah, okay, I think I get that. So you've been on a journey.
Yes.
So when exactly did you pick up? Did it have to do with any certain client? If, I mean, that you came in, that you sought out different alternative methods for healing this person, or
No, it had to do with my own personal work, and my own personal transits, like, and my life, like when I was 49, both of my parents died within 3 months of one another. And my marriage ended, and I had three very young children at the time. And that all happened within like 3 months of one another. And I was just pretty much, just putting one foot in front of another because that was just so much loss at one time. And I sought out a consultation with a professional astrologer for the first time. And that is not as strange as it may sound for a psychiatrist to seek out an astrologer. First of all, I wasn't a conventional psychiatrist. As I mentioned, I was much more of a psychoanalyst. But my dad had been interested in astrology all of his life. And he was also a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, but he was in the closet about it because he was so fearful for his reputation if anybody would know about his passion for astrology. But I grew up with kind of an awareness of it and an awareness of his investment and interest and his belief in the power of that tradition. And um, so, he died. And then I think maybe it had something to do with, connecting with him in some way. I sought out an astrologer, and I had the most incredible reading. Like it was just mind blowing. It was like, oh my God, how can this person know so much about me and understand me so completely, having never have met me before? And it was just very, very amazing to me. And I was so intrigued that I returned to see her multiple times. I came back to look at the charts of my children and the charts of my parents and anybody who was important in my life. And finally, I decided I want to learn to do this myself. And that was kind of like the gateway to everything else. And I enrolled in a apprenticeship program with Stephen Forrest. That was in 2008.
Mhm.
And ever since then, I studied with Stephen Forrest, then I studied with Maurice Fernandez, the teacher that we share. And then I started adding other kinds of modalities, like exploring shamanism and doing a training in that, and learning about functional medicine, which is it's like a way of getting at the root causes of what's going on physically in the body. And I learned about nutritional approaches, nutrient therapy approaches to mental illness, and the how to treat the immune system, and environmentally acquired illnesses. So I just sort of organically added one skill after another. And as I would learn a new thing, I would like try it in my practice, try it on myself. And till my practice morphed to be what it is today.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I notice I don't want to astrologize too much when you are also an astrologer, because you're going to have your own views on this. But just from my little point of view in your chart, that could be the South Node in Gemini, just all of these different sources of information.
I do think the nodal story is so important, like me running around collecting everybody's opinion about every single thing under the sun, but like the task here is like, Judy, what is your truth? What is your intuition? What do you believe in? And I think what I didn't say as I was explaining all of that age 49, that coincided with my Chiron return. So it was very much a Chiron return kind of experience and healing.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in the book as well, that you are that sort of chironic healer. I recognize that for myself. There's so much recognition in your book, and I can't believe it because you're a psychiatrist. But I am trying to, take that down a little bit, because it's been a while since you took that training and things have changed. But that's also why I think it's so important with your book. And I've read half of it, and luckily you've accepted an invitation for another interview, so I can read the last of it for that, because it's so important, because of where we are today, with so many people getting diagnosis and getting almost an understanding of themselves through that diagnosis, through the pathology. Do you agree with me that that's the sort of thing that's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's peculiar to me. Like, one thing that has been like so interesting to me, and not exactly what I would necessarily anticipate, like in my intake form, I ask people, what diagnoses have you been given? And then my next question is, do you agree with that? You know? And what has been interesting to me is that some people are dying for a diagnosis. Like they really want to be diagnosed, as though that then will be an explanation of their suffering and will be some kind of certainty and some kind of, I don't know, where they can hang their hat. I don't know. Like to me, it feels potentially very reductionistic and in a way limiting to be diagnosed in that way. But some people really appreciate it. And I can understand it insofar as there's a condition, a couple of conditions, actually three conditions that I talk about in one of the last chapters of the book that you haven't gotten to yet, that are these medical conditions that present with a lot of psychiatric symptoms. And if the underlying condition is unrecognized, then the treatment approach is, prescribe an antidepressant or prescribe a medicine for anxiety, not realizing that there's a real medical treatable cause that's underlying this. And I have had patients that are so grateful to know that all of these weird collections of symptoms that they have all fall under the rubric of a certain kind of condition. One of them is called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. Another is mast cell activation. Another is mold toxicity. I mean, it's just very, very helpful. And once you know what is really the cause, there are treatments, not necessarily cures, but there are treatments. But if you don't identify it properly, you can't help.
So diagnosing is not the problem. It's the, I mean, okay, let's take, because you say something in the book, you say that it's rooted in systemic problems.
Mm-hmm.
The crisis afflicting medicine and psychiatry is another expression of the much larger context of global breakdown, where the conventional approach to dealing with deeply rooted, vast systemic problems is clearly not working. So this is because you're, apropos diagnosis, you're also putting a diagnosis here on the world, like you're saying this is as bad as it gets. I mean, right? How is it you what is your take on the whole situation today of the world?
So what I'm referring to in that quote, is that we have this model of scientific materialism, and that somehow we are each separate from one another, and we're separate from the natural world, and nothing is sacred, nothing is enchanted, nothing is magical, nothing is really deserving of love and respect. Nothing is, there's no recognition that when we harm the earth or harm one another, that we're harming ourselves. So this whole paradigm that denies our interconnectedness and our oneness is, I believe, at the heart of so much of the suffering and what is going wrong on our planet now. And I mean, that same model is seen in psychiatry and in medicine, where, the body is like a machine to be, dosed, radiated, cut, manipulated. There's no, um, there's a doctor for your skin, there's a doctor for your eyes, there's a doctor for your lungs, but there's no like recognition of like a whole being, a person with a spirit, with a soul.
Mm. I mean, maybe it's also because we are so busy today that we miss that big picture. Don't you think? It's just a reflection. I mean, so many people in and out of the office, and maybe not time enough to really reflect about what's going on. Anyway, there's many pieces to it, of course. But then let's get into what it is that you feel like replacing it with. So I am really curious about why you took the psychiatrist training back then, and then what you've changed into. So there's a difference there you mentioned. But what did you want to achieve back then? Like, was it also like a calling to heal, to help people heal, or was it something a little different?
I mean, I grew up, I mean, it's all like so multi determined. I grew up in a family with a lot of trauma, with a lot of illness, um, psychiatric and medical. Um, as I mentioned, my father was a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and that is definitely what he thought was the best thing in the world to be. So it had a lot to do with my father and wanting to be loved. And also, like when you have a family that is really, really troubled, like it's not uncommon to find that in the history of healers, and that there was some kind of wish to be able to heal their mother or their brother or any other member of their family. And at least in my case, it was certainly not possible. And there's something that's so satisfying and meaningful about being able to be helpful to other people. But I mean, I believe that I have been, at this for many lifetimes. Like I don't think this is my first time being like a healer. Like I have that sense of myself that it's just something that is very innate to me, um, for my soul.
Interesting with the South Node in Gemini, maybe starting out more in the scientific room. And of course, it's hard to miss the pattern that, okay, your father has really inspired you for many reasons. I mean, just repetition,
Yeah.
neurologically, whatever is put into you, and also, like you said, being loved. But so in the way that you were helping people, when did you ever work like in the system, like in some public arena?
Really, not really. I mean, I did during my training, obviously. I worked in hospitals, and when I graduated from my training in child psychiatry, you can't just start a private practice right off the bat. You don't have the, patients to support you to do that. So I worked in a community mental health center, a clinic, as a child psychiatrist. And then as my practice grew, then I let go of that. So really, I mean, probably since 1990, maybe 1995, I completely have had like all of my work be through my private practice, you know. So there's a lot of autonomy in that. I'm not contracted with insurance companies. So, like, and, a specific kind of patient comes to see me. It's not typically I'm their first stop. They've had other experiences and disappointments and frustrations, and they're looking for something different. And then, like I'm sort of, so to speak, out of the closet as an astrologer and with my spiritual interests. And so people also seek me out for that reason. Like they want to see a psychiatrist who has that kind of orientation, like that's unusual.
It is unusual, right? It's rarely that I haven't heard about it before. At least if I know that the person is a psychiatrist, because sometimes, like I mentioned, maybe it's an author, but then his background way back is in psychiatry, but then you wouldn't maybe associate him with that. Yeah, yeah, of course. So today people seek you out for that reason, and you've been on that journey. So, okay, so I guess I hope I'm not asking you the same question again and again, Judy. I'm just so curious about this phenomena where you make that shift in your life. But I hear you. It's maybe it was already planted in you because of your father, that he was also an astrologer and a psychiatrist.
He was an astrologer, and he was also really unusual. I mean, when he was in training, psychoanalysis was king, and drugs were, not anything to be highly valued. And, over the course of his career, it totally shifted. And then drugs became king, and psychoanalysis was not valued. But he always thought both of them were really interesting and valuable. And he had a very open mind. I mean, he was an impossible person. So don't get me wrong. Like it was a very hard person to be close to, but he was an interesting person to be exposed to. Um, he would, and this was pre-internet. I guess he would read about stuff, and he would order strange supplements, and he had a device in his bedroom that created negative ions, which is something that is supposed to uplift your mood and create increased levels of serotonin. It's like what you find around waterfalls and the ocean, where there's kind of water hitting against a harder surface. Um, he was just a very open-minded and also kind of mystical person. Like I remember going with him to see psychics and mediums, like he would be like curious to visit people like that. And he would sometimes take me along. And so like I had this kind of exposure to an alternative world that probably many people don't.
Yeah, yeah, I like that exposure. That's came in very handy for you, very valuable later on.
But he
So
was also a professor of psychiatry, so he was both, just like I am both.
yeah, yeah. So do you, like you said, maybe today you wouldn't have been happy with the training that you took back then. Would you still? Are you still? How can I ask this question? You are both. Do you
Am
consider?
I happy that I did it? Am I happy that I did what I did? Is that what you want to ask?
I want to ask. No, because I think you are. But would you do it today? Would you be a psychiatrist today and then the alternative? Or do you think if you were to choose today, you would only be into the sacred part?
Well, like sometimes young people come to me because they say, I'd like to have a practice like your practice, but like, how do I do that? And like they're in the beginning. And like I just recently had a meeting with one young woman. She was a psychologist and she was suffering so much because she had the consciousness that I have now, but she was stuck in this doing this work that was so like by a protocol and so 3D and so not creative and so evidence based and so short term. And it was really kind of awful. So, like, her experience of training was so miserable. And I think with my consciousness now, if I would go through the training, it would be very hard to bear. Like, I don't think I could bear it. I think I would hate it. But it wasn't like that for me then, and the training was different. It was pre-computer. There was like paper records. There was it was so it's not that long ago. I'm not like I'm an ancient person, but things have changed so much
It has changed in such a short time. Really, it's
in
so
such
much.
a short time, but like I'm a member of like the Psychoanalytic Institute in Boston, but I don't vibe with it because it just completely leaves out the sacred and that spiritual dimension of experience. Like there's so little um it's so like not valued and so not included. So for me, like this whole discussion of personality, that's like one piece of the conversation, but it's definitely not the whole thing. And I get very frustrated and alienated by that approach.
Okay, and here you're even talking about psychoanalysis, not psychiatry, right?
Right, psychoanalysis, right.
But
And that this is not like a Jungian institute. This is like a conventional institute.
right, like that. Okay, yeah. Because I was thinking of the Jungian part where you're into dreams and everything.
No, no. Well, they're into dreams too, but not like there's different ways of looking at dreams. You can look at dreams as just like very personality based and has to do with you're expressing some kind of self state or some kind of conflict or some kind of wish that's just on the personality level. Or you can look at dreams as like you're having a visit from like a real like visit from a loved one that's passed on, or that you're getting some kind of message for the group or the collective. Like there's a whole different way of looking at the meaning of dreams and how to understand them that in a kind of more spiritual shamanic way versus like a, you know, secular psychoanalytic way.
Thank you so much for explaining that. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't think about that. Thank you for explaining that. That I love that how much you know, Judy, and I want to have so much part in it that we can today. So let's go to this. What is it that you want to replace it with? And it's the sacred. But how would that look if
Okay.
you could design how, I don't know, psychiatry?
Okay. So when somebody comes to see me, okay, so somebody calls me, and like very often people call me because they want to get off of medication, okay? Because I have expertise helping people get off of medication. There's the chapter in my book about that. So a person calls me and they want to get off of medication. Well, I'm not going to take them on unless they can persuade me that they are really motivated to work with me because it's a lot of work. Like to take a holistic approach to your health is a lot of work. It's not like, okay, here's this Prozac and I'll see you again in 3 months. It's not like that. Like I want them to commit to a diet that I think is healthful, like an anti-inflammatory diet. Like if somebody says, I'm sorry, I cannot stop eating gluten and dairy, I say, I don't think I'm like the right person for you, because it's just so inflammatory and so working against what we're trying to do together. So I want the person to be on a healthful diet and to be up for making dietary changes. You'll say, what's your diet like? Oh, it's healthy. Well, that means like a million different things to a million people. Like it's not at all agreed upon what that means, but I have my ideas about what's healthful. And I want them to be willing to eat a whole foods diet and to avoid inflammatory foods. So that's one piece. And then the second piece that I want almost everybody to do is a brain retraining program that helps them regulate their autonomic nervous system, particularly to calm down the sympathetic nervous system, because almost everybody in our culture is in a state of chronic fight or flight and sympathetic hyperarousal because of all the fear and the rate of change and all of the collapse. So if you want to get off of medications that were prescribed because you were so anxious or because you were so depressed or for whatever reason, you need to calm down your autonomic nervous system. So that requires doing these practices, which may take, 35 minutes a day. So I want them to commit to doing that. Okay. So that's kind of the preconditions. And then, I want them to get outside and to get sunlight and to move their bodies and to try and regulate their sleep schedule and just all of these common sense approaches to the physical body. There's nothing, you can't address the spiritual if the physical body is not being attended to. And so we talk about all of that. And then I send them like the paperwork if we agree that we're going to meet. And it's really quite extensive. And I go into a lot of detail about their lives and their experience and their relationships and their family. And then we get together and then we meet for an hour and a half. And I've like read and thought about what they wrote to me. And then we have a conversation about what stood out for me and what I wanted to know more about and what I thought would be something that I didn't understand or that, anyhow, by the time we finish talking, we have a plan. And it, involves diet, it involves the nervous system retraining and other kinds of lifestyle things. And then when they show me for a couple of months that they're on board and they're doing these things, then we'll start weaning them from medication, but slowly, like 10% a month, not sometimes 5%, sometimes holding steady. But like often people come to me and, I'll ask them in their intake form, like, do you have a spiritual practice, or what was the spiritual practice that you grew up with? And do you still resonate with that? And like very often people grew up Catholic or they grew up Jewish, but they're completely alienated from the tradition of their family that never felt particularly meaningful to begin with. And then they say, I would love to have a spiritual practice, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go about it, So then I'll talk with them about like ideas that I have about how to develop, like the soulful aspect of yourself, And so I'll make recommendations about things that they can do. I mean, another thing that I always talk about with people is like, what were things that you used to do when you were little, when you were a child that you used to really love to do, and do you still do them? And a lot of times the answer is no. So like somebody used to love to draw or to sing, and they don't do it anymore. And so that's like part of the treatment plan, to do those creative, self-expressive things.
I'm becoming all happy inside. I'm not sure why. I think I was imagining doing something as a child when you were just being there. Oh, but this is so different. This is so extensive, like a real intensive program you have to follow. Wow. And Yeah, can you believe if psychiatrists were to do that? I mean, right now, here I am in Denmark, there's like a really long waiting list for psychiatrists, and that's to do with many things, because it's also, if you have a diagnosis, then you're eligible for something else, and yeah, within that welfare system. So it's connected to all of that, money, and yeah, to material, I guess, to benefits. Um, but so this is very, very different. And what I feel in in the psychiatrist's office, what is happening is definitely like a very thorough examination of what's going on, like you were describing as well. But then there's the diagnosis, and then there's the medication, right? And what you are describing is it sounds so safe. It sounds so safe to go off medication if you know that the client, is doing all of that and have all of those um, wonderful inputs, like you were saying, soulful. Like, yeah, if you have all of that online, then it sounds like, yeah, it's a good time to wean off medication. It's so different.
And to
It's
do it very slowly, because if you do it fast, which is, I was trained to do it fast. I was trained, okay, cut it by 50%, then cut it by another 50%, and then go off, over like no time at all. And people have horrendous withdrawal syndromes. And then the psychiatrist will say, see, you did need the medicine. Look how bad you're feeling now. But it's not that they are having a relapse of their symptoms. They're having a reaction to the medication withdrawal. So you have to do it really, really cautiously and slowly.
okay, that's an eye opener as well. Yeah, okay. So you can't even go off of medication like that. It's like that for you, it's like obvious you can't do that. You'll have a reaction. So
Well,
what just
not everybody, but
okay.
many people.
Okay.
Many people. It varies, like people's degree of sensitivity. I mean, some people are so exquisitely sensitive. It's just so, so difficult. You have to do it so gradually and support them in so many different ways.
Yeah, and apropos the supporting, I guess, I mean, a lot of people would not be able to do your program, do you think?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Like let's say somebody's super depressed.
Yeah.
I'm not the right person for them. They can't do it.
Okay. Okay.
They have to be, I'm not a crisis kind of practice. Like
So
if
what's
somebody's in like total crisis, there's this, I'm not the right person
so what's
because
your
they can't.
plan here? What's your plan here, Judy? What are we gonna do? So what should you do if then you are depressed?
If you, well, I don't know, you need to find somebody who's going to help you, with medicines or whatever way. But I'm not, if, like you're too depressed to follow a diet, you're too depressed to do any nervous system retraining, what am I going to do for you? I don't want to get involved in prescribing one, pharmaceutical after another.
I see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking like on a global level, what are we to do with that then when people are really wounded? No one knows.
Yeah, I don't have the solution, when a person is too devastated to help themselves.
Mm. Yeah, and I really love your nervous system reprogramming as well. So it's all, I mean, you could start anywhere in all of what you were just saying, right? You could start with the food, you could start with the retraining of your nervous system.
Do
Um,
them simultaneously, both of them together, you
yeah,
know.
that's what you want, but it's a lot. But I hear you. I hear you. I'm just saying it's a lot to undertake if you are in a crisis situation. But like you say, then that's not where people seek you out. It's so what do people share with you? What do clients share with you that they've experienced with other psychiatrists? But I
Well,
guess
that they were withdrawn, in a rapid way from medicine, and the psychiatrist wasn't listening to them about what was going on, and um, insisted upon tapering them like way too fast. Or, like they're not doing well, and so there's constantly another medication being added, and then another medication to deal with the side effects of the other medication, and they're on like cocktails of, tons of medicines.
mm,
And nobody talks to them about diet. Diet is so profound. Like if you're somebody who has an intolerance to, let's say, soy or eggs, or corn, not to mention gluten or dairy. It can be very much what is fueling your depression and anxiety and insomnia.
Right. Yeah, I see. Okay, so I wanna just end our conversation today with just talking a little bit more about why did you write this book at this time? I mean, all your years of experience, you could have. I mean, why now?
Well, I think I was only ready now. There was a lot of self-doubt and kind of self-confidence issues to overcome to uh, finally allow me to bring this into the world. Like I had a pretty tough growing up. My parents were both Holocaust survivors, and there's a lot of trauma.
Mm.
And so I think it was like years of personal work and also, particular astrological transits. Like when I finally was able to bring the book into the world, my progressed sun crossed my ascendant.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yep. And Mars, my natal Mars, my progressed Mars that had been in Pisces for my entire life moved into Aries at the same time that the progressed sun crossed the ascendant. Like there were a lot of like things conspiring to allow me to kind of step forward into and like shine my light in a way that I hadn't felt confident to do previously.
Mm. Lovely. Yeah, I like that. But but why was it important for you to write this book? I mean, I'm really, really happy that you did because it's such a contrary view here. It's such a contrast to what we're seeing. But why was it important for you to spread this out?
Well, I feel like that's like my soul's purpose, like it's my North Node is in Sag. It's important for me to say my truth. My Saturn is on the North Node. It's important for me to claim my authority and credibility. Um, I feel as though, things are in great need of a paradigm shift, and I have this alternative perspective that I believe in to offer.
Yeah, sure. And also, like you say, that today there's no appreciation of the innate intelligence and healing potential of the body, and not focus on prevention and um, identifying the treatable root causes of sickness. But I like this, the innate intelligence, right? And the healing potential in us. I think that's, I mean, in there, I feel like you are part of a really large movement in trauma therapy, in psychotherapy, who's talking about this innate, inbuilt healing potential in us. It's just that it's really missing in what I connect to and in what I work in social work. So I am, in that cross field of psychiatry. And that's where it's lacking in conventional medicine, right?
Right. It's just the body is kind of a machine and you just manipulate it.
And so, okay, just one last question. How is the manipulation different with a pill than it is with foods?
Well, I mean, to me, like with food, you're like nourishing yourself. We all need to eat. And there's a way of selecting foods that, are like beneficial on many levels. Like you can be conscious about what kind of foods you put into your body, like where they're grown and how they were grown. And you can bless your food before you eat it. I mean, you could bless your pills before you take them.
Yeah.
But, like there's a way of, like there's eating is such a spiritual practice in and of itself. It's such an expression of the interconnectedness of everything, just in terms of where Was that tomato grown? It was part of the soil. It was part of the rain. It was part of the sun. Who harvested it? How did it, get to your plate? Like it's just such an expression of how everything is one.
I see. I see it is very different. Yeah, I just had to get that curiosity out. Okay, yeah, no, it is very different like that.
And I mean, it's you make a choice. 1 second. You make a choice yourself about what you eat, um and it's a choice that you make, multiple times a day. And the same with like regulating your nervous system. It's something that you're really doing for yourself and controlling yourself. It's not
Right.
like somebody else telling you to do this thing and then you
Yeah, okay, that's a major significance as well, that you're not getting hooked on, you're not getting addicted to either the doctor or the drug, right? But that you have, like you said, you have to eat, so we'll do that anyway. Yeah.
you have to breathe, you have to sleep, like there's all kinds of ways that you can
Yeah.
do it more intelligently and consciously.
Yeah. Naturally. Yeah. Okay. So, Judy, do you have anything you feel like leaving the listeners with for this first one? I'm so happy that you come back. But is there anything you feel like you want to share here in the end?
Well, like I really want people to read my book. And so I've been doing lots of podcasts since it came out in January of 2024. But also since August, I've been making these little reels on an Instagram channel. It's under the name of my book, sacred_psychiatry. And like I talk about all the things that strike me and that I care about. Like I keep like a running list on my phone when I hear something about, oh, I want to make a reel about this. They're very from the heart and organic. And so if people are interested, I would like to let them know about that.
Wonderful. Yeah. I like your passion for sharing this. And I follow you. It's really, really important. So thank you. And I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. And I'm so happy that I get to see you again. So thank you for this first conversation.
All right, great. Thank you, Mannah.